everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. We are going to be returning to the 1850s dress today for this video, and I am very excited to get back to work on it in the interim week while I was working on this Gunny Sacks dress, which if you have not seen the video for this one, I will leave that link down in the description below. It's my most recent sewing vlog. But while I was working on this, I was also doing a lot of hand sewing on this. Oh my gosh, the hem took me so freaking long. Remember, it's like what, 5 1/4 panels around of like 50-inch wide. It's so much. So the hem took so long to do by hand, and there are also I think 15 hooks and bars all the way down the front, so I did all of those as well. So all of that hand sewing is now done, which is the good thing. That means that I can move on to the sleeves and the trimming, and if there's other things that I have forgotten to do, for example, like I don't think there's gonna be that much else to do. I know I still have to do the hooks and eyes at the waist. I have not done those yet. And I also grabbed this lace right here because I think I'm going to make a lace collar out of this, because in the 1850s and honestly the 1860s, they wore applied lace collars that would just be like really gently tacked on to the neckline. And so I think that if I can run a gathering stitch around the top of this, that I can just gather it up slightly and get a lace collar out of that, do a little whip stitching onto the bodice there. So that is my goal with this. I thought this one was just really pretty and very nice vintage antique, and I think it'll just look so nice on there. So that is something else for this week. But the main thing to really like finish this, besides, you know, trimming and all that, are sleeves, obviously, because we have no sleeves. Oh yeah, that's the other part. I want to make under sleeves for this too. So we'll see how much I get to, because I want to show you the whole finished look at the end of this. The bonnet, I think by the time you're watching this video, you will have already seen the bonnet, even though I have not actually made the bonnet yet. But because of the timing of making videos, the bonnet's a Saturday video. So if you haven't already seen the bonnet video, that will also be linked down below, since I will have made a new bonnet for this dress. So I was looking at the patterning for the sleeve yesterday, and when we look at this sleeve right here, you can see that there's really two portions. There's an upper portion and a lower portion, and then we have the applied band that goes over the middle. And so this lower portion really flares out, but the upper portion, while it's fitted in the shoulder, it actually does flare out a little as well. So I was looking at the sleeve pattern that comes with this one, which was one of the original patterns that I'd thought about using for this, and it does have an upper portion and then a lower portion, but the lower portion is really big, where the upper portion is really small. So last night I was just kind of playing around with, okay, how do I change that to hopefully make it a little more even, a little bit more like my fashion plate. So what I have already done is I've cut out a mock-up. I have not yet sewn it together or anything, but this is the top portion. So this is just going to be eased into the armscye and, you know, done up obviously here. And then this will have flared out a bit down by the time it gets to the bottom. And then this comes along, and this will be gathered like this, upside down. This will be gathered across the top and will get gathered into this. So I'm hoping that that will work. Ideally, I feel like I would want to have the giant sleeve puff, that's the lower sleeve, already done by now, because then I would know how much will be filling out, how like big this sleeve is, but it's not done. I do have some that I got at like a costume sale that I can try to use as a stand-in maybe, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. So let's go ahead and sew up this mock-up and see if it's worth actually putting into the bodice. While Sewing Rebecca goes to work on the sleeve mock-up, I am here as sponsor Rebecca to tell you a little bit about the sponsor for today's video, Huge Tomato. So Huge Tomato has a wonderful line of especially pearl, but also some crystal jewelry, and they were kind enough to send me several pieces from their collection to show to you all. So let's take a look at some of these gorgeous pieces, one of which, at least, I am sure that I'm going to be wearing with this dress. I will have links to all of these pieces in the description, but these are what Huge Tomato sent me in their lovely boxes here. And this one in particular, I'm very excited about. Look at these beautiful sparkling pieces. I'm thinking about wearing this set with this dress. This is their yellow toned crystal jewelry set with a ring, earrings, and pendant necklace. I also love the classic elegance of these right here, which these are actually faux pearl, but I just think they look so perfect for Victorian. And they are the faux pearl vintage royal teardrop earrings in the shape snow. This pair is freshwater cultured pearl in the French royal style in 14 karat gold over sterling silver. So I will have links to all of these pieces down in the description so that you can go check out Huge Tomato. Thank you so much to Huge Tomato for sponsoring this video. So I have my sleeve mock-up here, and I also am wearing these undersleeves that I picked up at a costume sale several years ago that might work for this. I'm not really sure. Like, they're nice that they've got some eyelet in here, so they've got some decoration, but the thing that I am having trouble with undersleeves is finding out the information on like how they actually attached in to the sleeves. So like the simplicity pattern, for example, it actually just tells you to safety pin them into your sleeve, which is obviously not historically accurate because that's not a thing. I was under the impression that they tied in, but I was looking through Costume in Detail, and the one bit of information that I could find was actually this right here, which says that they had elastic up at the top of the sleeve. But I'm still a little hesitant of like, how would that elastic actually hold it in place? Where on your arm is it supposed to go to? This one has drawstrings, which of course I can't tie a drawstring on this portion of my arm by myself. So like elastic does seem like it makes more sense, and I could always sub this out for elastic. But again, like, would it be in the crook of my elbow? Would it be above that, which obviously would then be larger than my elbow? So would it fall down, etc. So I'm trying to figure all of that out, and also figure out if this is going to be kind of enough, because this fashion plate does have a very large poof. And then I have the pieces of my mock-up put together here, and I've just kind of pinned them to my blouse in, I think, approximately where the shoulder hits. I probably should, you know, actually put on the bodice and check, but I don't want to put a corset on. And what I'm finding here is that I think that the tail down here, like the opening, probably needs to be at least an inch or so longer, whereas up here I think we're actually too long, because I do want more of the sleeve to show. So I kind of feel like this is maybe more like where it needs to be, and like pull that down a little. So I think I need to do some shaping mostly on the bottom section here, because if this is sitting in the right place in my shoulder, then the top portion is looking okay, I think. Oh, I don't know, maybe it is a little short. Okay, fine. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll attach the mock-up in to the bodice and see if I can put the bodice on, even just like maybe without the corset. And that way I know where it's actually hitting me, shoulder, arm, etc. Because this seam should be around the crux of my elbow, and I feel like it's in the back especially, it's coming up too high. So, okay, I'll put it on the bodice and we'll see how it goes. I have it attached into the bodice now, so it is sitting on the shoulder where it should be. I do wonder if the top part is not long enough. It's not coming down to the crook of my elbow, which is here, so it's like a good 1.5 inches shorter than that. And then down here I have actually pressed this up, or not pressed, but pinned it up, and I still think that like this length I think is probably good, but I feel like it needs more width. And then this was obviously too long, and frankly, like, there's no seam allowance on this right now, and it needs at least some seam allowance. So it probably does have to get lengthened at least like 1/2 inch. But yeah, something weird is going on up here, because A, it does seem too short on this upper portion, but also I'm getting weird wrinkles, and I'm not really sure why. I also, like, this is barely eased into the shoulder, but I still somehow feel like it's too much ease. It had like 1/2 inch of ease, but I feel like it needed 0. So yeah, I think it's the upper portion that something's gonna have to be done with it. I almost feel like the upper portion needs to flare out a little bit more to begin with to get that shape, and then I need more width in the bottom all the way around to then get gathered into a wider upper portion, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think mock-up number 2 is in order. So I have mock-up number 2 on here now. I think I actually went too long on the upper portion in the like inside of the arm. The outer portion or the outside of the arm looks good. If anything, it might still be too short, but I do think that this is now too long by at least probably about a half an inch. I had increased it by I think a full inch. So that needs to come up a little bit. And then I think that by increasing this, it meant that I didn't decrease the lower portion enough. So I think that needs to come up. It's actually already folded and it still looks really long. So yeah, that probably needs to come up like really pretty significantly. Maybe to there would be a little better. And then of course there will be a 1/2 inch seam allowance that will come out of this length. I did widen it by a few inches. Like I want to say about 4 to 5 inches wider around for this lower part of the sleeve, and I'm not sure if I love it. So I think I'm gonna have to spend some time like looking at all of this in the mirror and just playing and pinning and etc. and seeing if I can get the shape I want. The other weird thing that I don't know how to like do anything with, and maybe it'll just fix itself, is it just feels very like baggy around this upper portion, but like it's a pagoda sleeve, it has to flare out, and it already starts wide because it's on such a dropped shoulder. So I'm not really sure what to do with that, but yeah, I need to play around with some stuff. I'll show you when I reach a conclusion. So I realized that one of the main problems that I was having was that it seemed like the sleeve was just kind of rotated in the sleeve head. So I actually wound up rotating it back forward so that it comes like this, and the seam is closer up here as opposed to like underneath the bodice, and I feel like that has fixed a lot of issues. Now what I'm feeling is that the lower portion is maybe just too long overall all around, but like the shape is looking a lot better. I was contemplating if I needed to maybe take some of the width out of the upper portion, which I may still do, but it's pretty close. Like I think if I pinched out 1 inch by the time it got to the hem, that it would probably be a slightly better shape. And then I would keep the width around, I think, of the bottom and then just shorten it. So I think that's what I'm leaning towards. I'm gonna kind of again double check in the mirror to make sure this isn't too wide, but it seems like it is taking up as much as like the fashion plate sleeve does. It just seems long as opposed to wide. So yeah, I think I just need to cut off some of the length and I should be good. So yeah, I think where I have it pinned up to now is good. I did also just pin out that little pinch here to take out like a 1/2 inch on each side, inch overall. So I will taper that in. And otherwise, I think it's hanging really quite nicely. So one thing that I noticed with this fashion plate is that you can see on the inside of the sleeve, it is actually the solid blue, which would be my equivalent of the deep purple. So I am going to line, as in bag line, the bottom of the sleeve. The top of the sleeve, I'm probably going to flat line with cotton, just for like a little extra, you know, support structure, etc. Just regular cotton sateen or muslin. And those are just going to get put together like right sides together. I'm not going to worry about hiding the seam in the bag line up here where it meets. And then the band is of the purple like fringe trim is going to get put on over that. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of that together now, and then I will have sleeves. So let's talk about how to make the bows for the front of the dress. I decided to do these a little bit narrower than the band on the skirt. These start with a 3.5 inch wide piece of the poly satin, and then I edge it with the fringe just like I did for the band of the skirt. So you can see like this is the back side, what it looks like, and then this is the front side. Then I cut 1 full width of these down into 4 pieces, which wound up being about like 14.5 inches wide for 1 bow. Let's see. Yeah, exactly 14.5 inches wide for one bow. And I cut them after I'd already put the fringe on. And then I sewed the ends together. I know this is very dark fabric, but I sewed the ends together, right sides together, made a little seam there. I really didn't worry about doing any finishing on the edges in here because they're going to be inside the little like center loops. So although I did originally finish the really, Dora? Dora, I'm talking. Dora, I'm trying to teach people how to make bows. I know you like bows. Oh, she looks pretty. That's a good color for her. Don't touch the iron, it's hot. Can I tell them how to make bows now? Okay, let's try to do this with Dora not on all of the pieces. What was I saying? So I did finish the edges right here before I put the fringe on. You can't even see it because it's underneath the edges of the fringe, but there is serging right there. It probably doesn't have to be done, except that this stuff frays like crazy on the long edges because I tear these strips, I don't cut them. So once I have put the edges together like this, then I also have all these little centers, and these started out 2 inches wide, and I serged the edges and just folded them in and stitched them down right there, right along the edge. Dora, do not touch the iron. Don't be stupid. And then I put these right sides together, do a little seam across the edge there, and turn it right side out, and it becomes a loop. I hope you are enjoying this, Dora, like licking my hand as I hold things up because, yeah, thanks, Dora. So once it's a loop, then you just slide it onto the bow like so, and you wind up with a finished bow. So I'm not positive, but either 9 or 10 of these to make in total. Basically, I can tell from the fashion plate that there are for sure 5 on the skirt. It's hard to tell with the bodice. It honestly almost looks like 3. I'm gonna need way more than 3 because I have a long torso. So I'm kind of thinking like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bodice, but I think I might make 10 just in case. I am planning to do all of them the same size, and I'm actually planning to do the bands on the sleeves the same width as well, that 3.5 inch starting width. Look at that pretty girl. I should make her a bow. If I have an extra bow, it's going to be for Dora. So as you can see, I now have some of the bows pinned on. I do need to make another strip for that 5th bow there, but they just seem a little large for the bodice. Honestly, I'm a little worried that they're a little large for the skirt. So I've actually gone and I have made up a narrower strip right here that can be used for the bodice, and I'm going to make them shorter as well, like less wide. I think you can see that there. This is just kind of pinned in place just as a guess, but you can see it's a lot narrower. And I think that is going to be a much more appropriate size for the bodice. It's 1/2 inch less wide. So it's a 3 inch width to start instead of 3.5 inch like these. And then, yeah, it's not going to be 14.5. I don't know how long yet, but I think that's much better. I'm still a little worried that like by the time you get up here, it's going to be a little on the large side, but I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this end off from its tail and put it together and just see how that is. So just for comparison's sake, this is the new narrower one and shorter one. This one is 13.25 inches long in the strip and then sewn together at the ends, whereas this was 14.5. So it's 1.25 inches shorter and 1/2 inch less wide. And I think that's a nice gradation from that one to that one, but I do wonder if by the time we get up to like here, if that's still going to be a little too big. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make a few more that are that length and then see if I need to maybe shorten them and just like keep getting shorter each one. That's a possibility. So this is kind of what I'm talking about here, because this bow is actually the same as this bow, but this one just looks so much larger because it's like up at the top, and I kind of feel like making 2 more the same size, it's just going to be kind of overwhelming. So I'm kind of thinking, I know I've said kind of a lot, I'm kind of thinking that maybe I should shorten this one even a little bit more so it's a little bit smaller that way, and like each one maybe just be even 1/4 inch shorter each one. I think that might be a kind of good gradation as it goes up the top. Okay, so the top one is now actually a full inch shorter than this one, and it looks so much better scale-wise. So yes, I'm gonna go ahead and make these two, because I think there will be two to fill it out. Hopefully I won't need three. And these will be like each one progressively smaller to get to that one. So this is what it looks like with all four of them on, getting progressively smaller as it goes up to the top. Honestly, it still seems like a lot. I'm still missing that one, but it's a lot of bows. But I don't think I could do with only three up here. I don't know. Like, I am slightly tempted to space them all out so that there's like three on the bodice and then the five on the skirt, and basically just like move this one down one, but I think this might get too sparse. I think I'll have to wait and put on the sleeves and see what it looks like then. So to do the bag lining on the sleeves, I first put the right sides together on the short ends here, and now I have gone and I've sewn around the bottom hem with right sides together after pressing these obviously, and now I'm going to turn this so that it's right sides out, and I may have to clip this because it is a little curved, but I'm kind of hoping that I won't have to. But yeah, once I have this turned right sides out, then I will match up or line up these edges up here and serge along the top edges to keep them in place and to finish off all those little frays. And then this can get attached to the upper sleeve. So as you can see, these sleeves are now assembled here. The bands are on the sleeves. You have to do a certain amount of easing to this top, which I don't love the look of because the sheen of the fabric like really brings it out. But because it is wider around here than it is here, and this is not a bias strip, I guess in hindsight I could have maybe done it on the bias to alleviate that, but I think that it will look okay still on. And what I still have to do, besides obviously set the sleeves, which is going to be next, is that I'm going to do that sort of like ladder stitch to close up that seam on both of the sleeves. And I do also still have to hand sew all of the bows onto the bodice and skirt as well. I have sleeves! Ta-da! Obviously I'm not wearing my corset, so I cannot close the bodice, but yeah, I'm very happy with how these sleeves turned out. I think that they are exactly what I was going for. I love like the purple lining inside too. I'm glad that I noticed that detail because at first I did not notice that detail, and I'm really liking the bands matching as well. So now the next thing will be some hand sewing because I have to sew the 9 bows onto the skirt and also the front of the bodice. And I'm also going to start on the collar. That I'm going to attempt to gather that lace that I showed you guys. I'm going to attempt to gather it on the machine. I don't know if it'll work on the machine. I may have to hand gather it just because it's like so delicate. But basically I'm just going to gather up the flat edge and pull it, you know, to fit so that it can curve around the collar. And once it is the right curve, I will cut off the excess because I know it's going to be a little too long, and I will just kind of gently whip it to the top of the collar here. So yeah, a lot of hand sewing, and then I still have to decide what I'm doing with the undersleeves, if I am going to make new ones or if I'm going to use the ones that I got from the sale, because they do work-ish. I mean, again, how do I keep them on my arm is the big question, but otherwise I do think that they look pretty similar to the fashion plate. It's just that they're not quite as full, but I don't know that I have better fabric to make ones that could be the fullness. Like, I don't actually know how that fullness was achieved is kind of my thing, because it feels like they are stuffed with something. But I've never heard of undersleeves being stuffed with something. So is it just that they are such sheer and lofty fabrics? Like, so, you know, they have so much body that they didn't need to be stuffed with something? I don't know. But yeah, so I have to do some figuring out and see what there all is time for before I wind up doing the photo shoot for this outfit. But for now, I will come back to you with some collar info, and I'll show you what it looks like with like all the bows sewn on. So yesterday I did all of the hand sewing. So you can see here is the collar all nicely sewed on. I did wind up gathering this by hand before kind of pressing it into a circle and then whip stitching it with pretty large stitches onto the collar. And then I have all of the bows sewn on as well. I mostly only sewed down like the top edges. I think the bodice ones I did both edges, and then the skirts I did just the top edge bows. I'm hoping that this overlap will work, but the next step is that I have to actually like try this all on, make sure that that this point does not overlap the bow, because if so, then I'm obviously going to need to move this bow down a little bit. But they're all spaced. I think they're 5 inches apart on the skirt, and they're like 4.75 inches apart on the bodice. And on the bodice ones, I made it so that they would actually be like halfway past where the edge of the bodice is, so that they would look center. So hopefully that actually works. And then I also did that ladder stitching on the inside of the sleeve. So sleeves are all done too. So that means that the bodice and skirt and everything like that, that is all set. Which then means that the next step is actually trying it on, like I mentioned, to make sure that the overlap works, that the bow placement worked for everything, and like the collar, you know, to make sure that everything that I've done by hand, the hem, everything like that, since the last time that I've tried it on, make sure all of that works. Once I know if that works, I'm also going to determine the undersleeve situation, whether I'm just going to go with the ones that I already have or whether I need to make new ones. And if I'll make new ones, that'll be next in this video. If I don't need to make new ones, then probably the next thing you're going to see is actually going to be the reveal, because although I have not made it yet as I am talking to you now, I'm making the bonnet in a different video, which will have already come out. So if you have not seen the bonnet video, I will link that up here and down below in the description. But otherwise, unless I'm making those undersleeves, let's go ahead and just go to the final look of the outfit. So a few quick notes on some changes that I made after I tried this on. One is that it did wind up overlapping with where the bottom of the point was to this top bow on the skirt. So I actually took the top bow off of the skirt and I put it like dangling off of the point right there, because that is where it needed to hit. So it's just tacked on with some stitches right onto the point. You can see like how barely it is on there, but I did sew through it so that the bow portion wouldn't move through the middle portion. So yeah, that is tacked on there. I also tacked on the pendant from that beautiful yellow set from Huge Tomato, because I tried it on and I mean, it just matches perfectly, but the chain was not going to be the right length for it to hit right here. And I really wanted it to hit right here. So I've actually just sewn a few stitches through the back of the pendant, and now it'll be on there, and then I can take it off when it's done. It took like a minute, if that, to sew on, so that was great. I did also take in the waist just a tiny bit right here at the side seam. I know it's not focusing there, but I took it in like about a ½ inch on each side, just right at the waist to have it fit just a little bit better. And the one other thing that I did, which I think is so funny, I actually followed Butterick's instructions and I safety pinned on these sleeves. So you can see the safety pins right there, and it actually worked really well. I just kind of undid the drawstring, safety pin like 5 or 6 times to the seam allowance right in there, and it works perfectly, and it will be better for the hot weather that we're going to have tomorrow for the spooky shoot. So I'll see you tomorrow in the full getup. I am very, very happy with how this project has turned out with the bonnet and everything, which you would have seen in the last video, and the bodice and dress and all of everything. I'd say the only thing that I will probably change for later is that I did find myself stepping on the very front of my hem during the photo shoot. So the front of the dress definitely does need to be hemmed just a little bit shorter, and then it'll be perfect. But yeah, I mean, the sleeves are great. I love the way it looks. I love like the purpley color. I'm very, very happy with this, and I'm looking forward to wearing this again, hopefully sometime soon. As you can see, I did decide to pair it with the jewelry from Huge Tomato, the yellow set here. I think I already told you how I sewed on this brooch, but yeah, I think that the color just complements these perfectly. So all of the Huge Tomato jewelry that I showed you earlier in this video, again, is linked down in the description below, and they have a 35% off discount for you, and all of that information is also down in the description, so definitely make sure that you go check out Huge Tomato. Thank you again so much, Huge Tomato, for sponsoring this video. So if you liked this whole video and this whole project, go ahead and please click the thumbs up icon, and if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon and Mirage. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!